Hello and welcome to my channel. I have a showcase of 3 Snowglobe dioramas that light up. And there are 2 main die sets that I use to create these projects. They're both from Paper Discovery. The first is this one, which actually creates the main Snowglobe display stand for our diorama for our scene, and it even has 3 different landscape bridge pieces or scene pieces to work from. And this one is called the Diorama Elegant Ornament die set. And then the companion die set that goes with it is this one, which is the Village Set die set. And the nice thing about this is there's one die plate that has these 9 houses connected. And I suppose you could actually separate them into individual houses, but I rather like keeping them all attached and then just running this through my die cutting machine and getting a bunch of different houses to choose from. But you also get this border die that has these cute little trees on the one end and a nice curvy hill on the other. So that's another fun one to use. The main die set also comes with some snowflakes and mats and layers to actually decorate the snow globe and stand. However, I chose to decorate it a little bit differently because these are actually going to be Christmas presents. So I chose these 2 die sets from Sizzix. This first one is Winter Leaves, and there's the number for you there, 663425. And in this one I used the holly branch and this other sort of, I don't know what it is, kind of another type of berry branch. And I used those 2 die sets from this, or dies from that set. And then out of this set, which is another Sizzix die set designed by Linda Canase, this one is the Card in a Box Christmas, and the number there is 663603. And out of this one, I used just these 2 flowers because they reminded me a little bit of poinsettias, and so I chose those. Although looking at it now, this might have been another pretty one just to add some foliage to my decorations as well, but I didn't actually use that one on these projects. So let me show you what I made. So I've got 3 versions in 3 different colorways, and I do have a tutorial video on how to put this exact box together. So this second one I did on camera, and I have a tutorial for it. So if you want to check that out, you can click the link up in the upper right corner there, and you can see how basically everything, but I think except for adding the Nouveau drops to the center of the flowers, I did cover in that video. There are some subtle differences between the 3, and I'll just briefly go through them. I talk a lot about the improvements that I made from 1 and 2 in my tutorial video for this, so rather than repeat that here, maybe just head on over and catch the tutorial. However, between 2 and 3, there are some at least one, what I would consider substantial improvement that I made that I want to highly recommend, since I did not think about it as I was making the second one. And that is, the thought crossed my mind, but I didn't have a solution for it as I was creating the second one. But as you can see here on the back, there's actually this little pocket that houses the battery pack for the fairy lights. And this is an on-off switch, so as you can see, I can turn the switch on and you can see it lights up our scene. And this battery pack, even though it's a thin battery, it's just plastic and some extra foam and paper, it does make this sort of lean ever so slightly towards the back, and it's standing up just fine, but as you can see, it's not the most stable. A strong wind, you know, just the right direction, or somebody walks by and grazes it a little bit, and it can easily topple over. So as I was putting this together, I had paused a little bit and thought about, well, should I add some weight to this base piece here and hide it inside there, because it's hollow otherwise. And I didn't have anything at hand right away, and I didn't want to pause and kind of find a solution. I just wanted to keep on going and finish the project since I was shooting the tutorial. But it occurred to me later that I can very easily hide some pennies right into this bottom piece here. So I just glued some pennies right down into the base at the bottom. And in fact, it's just 8 cents because a row of 4 will fit right across here rather nicely. And what I did was I actually pushed the pennies so that they're adhered slightly towards the front of the snow globe, and that counteracts the extra weight from the battery pack on the back. So the penny does take up a fair amount of the base. So the weight is nicely distributed, especially since 4 fit across really nicely. And then I just doubled up. So I just put 2 pennies, where you see each of the pennies here. I just added another one on top. And you could add another stack of 4 if you wanted. There's a little bit of room. You might have to, as you add more, you might have to kind of reduce it down to 3, depending on how many you want to stack in there. But I feel like 8 is a really nice number. It feels substantial, the project. It doesn't feel like it's just something made out of paper. So it feels solid. And when you set it down, you don't have to kind of set it down just right. Because here, if I set it down and it's just a little bit leaning backwards, it'll just tip back. Whereas this, you set it down and it's going to kind of stabilize itself. And so that is a huge improvement over this one. And I would say this one was a huge improvement over my first one too. So, but the pennies in the base here, I do think provide a very, where I would say number 2 over number 1 is a huge kind of finish and polish and final look improvement. This one is a big sort of practical improvement because this actually makes the whole piece feel more stable and more sturdy. It's not just a matter of it looking kind of fit and finish and polished. It actually does help with the functionality and the stability of the project overall. The second improvement that I made on my third one was a suggestion from my husband, and that's to line the fairy lights with a strip of vellum to hide them. So if I hold this by comparison, you can actually see the strings of light right there on the inside, whereas here you really can't, because that vellum, although it's sheer, it is pushed up right against the outer edge here, and so you really can't see the lights. But because it's a vellum, the light still shines through it just fine. You hardly, I would say there's really not much of any diminished light at all. And one of the things that I found was that on this iteration, because I used a very dark cardstock on the back, I think that helps to absorb light, and so it makes everything else feel lit up and there's a higher contrast. Whereas on this one, I used glitter paper as my backdrop, that background piece, and that has even more shiny properties to it. So it's reflecting a lot more light And so this, even though the light is actually covered with a piece of vellum, you would think that that would diminish the light a little bit, but because there's glitter paper in there, whatever light that's coming through is being reflected quite a bit. And so that's just something to keep in mind. It just really depends on whatever look that you're going for. When you look at it in person, on camera, the lighting feels more flooded than it actually is when you look at it in person. So in person, you can see the scene very, very clearly, even this one that feels like, oh, there's just flooded light there. You can't hardly make anything out, but that's not really the case when you look at it in person. And then some other small differences that you can kind of play around with, especially if you're using the same village die set that I'm using. Here I backed the little houses with some just thin yellow origami paper, and that gives the houses the look that there's light on, even during the daytime when you would not have the fairy lights turned on. So I think that's kind of a neat look. On my second one, I chose not to line it with anything at all. So the window that's cut through, you can see clear through to the background. Just a different look. On all of them, I did run the last little fairy light to the top of the church up here at that last window. And so they all have that light shining through at the very top there. And then on my third one, instead of lining with yellow paper, I lined it with vellum to make it just look just a little bit frosted, a little bit more clean, and I rather like the look of that one too. It's just different looks. It's just, whatever you like, whatever you prefer. So as I mentioned, if you want to see how to put one of these together, and specifically how to put this one together, which does have most of the improvements that I learned from making my first one, go ahead and check out that tutorial video. However, I would go the extra step to add the pennies for sure, that I did on my last one here. The vellum is kind of optional. I actually don't mind not having it, but having it just makes it all the more kind of clean and finished and polished on the inside. But I would definitely advise putting pennies or whatever you can use as weights. But I found 8 cents was enough. You could add more, you could add fewer, you could add something else altogether. Just add enough so that it feels like when you put it down, it will kind of self-correct. And I had the benefit of having already made one, and all I did was taped some pennies to the back of this one, and that's how I came up with 8. So I would recommend starting there and then adding more if you want it to feel even more substantial. But that's really my kind of top tip that I would highly, highly recommend. So those are the projects I wanted to share with you today, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, commenting, and sharing. And if you want to catch new videos as I release them, hit the subscribe button and the bell so that you get a notification whenever I post new videos to my channel. Thank you so much, and until my next video, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye!